Hello, I'm Patricia, 48 years old, and I live with my husband Ethan and my mother-in-law in a well-connected suburb close to the train station, which provides excellent access to the city center. During our house hunting phase, Ethan, who had just been promoted to a managerial position, insisted on finding the spacious apartment, even though it came with a high rent. He believed the extra space was worth the cost. Ethan is 6 years older than me and was introduced to me by a mutual friend after his divorce. His mature, comforting presence quickly became something I relied on. After 3 years of dating, we decided to get married. When I revealed my struggles with infertility due to a past illness, his affection remained unwavering. My feelings for him only grew stronger even after learning about his previous marriage and his son Willie from that relationship. "I'm truly sorry to ask you to live with my parents and son," Ethan had said. "I promise I won't let you suffer. I'll ensure you're happy and give you space so you don't feel suffocated." He suggested moving into a large apartment where I could have my own room. Willie, turning 9 that year, wouldn't require much care, especially with his grandmother around to help. After his divorce, Ethan's parents had supported him with childcare till his father tragically passed away in an accident, leaving his mother to take over as Willie's caretaker. From our very first meeting, Willie barely made eye contact with me. Initially, I attributed his reserved demeanor to his age and possible shyness, so I didn't let it bother me too much. As long as the family accepted me, I felt content to be part of their household. My mother-in-law, a woman of quiet elegance, treated me with kindness during our formal introduction post-engagement, which gave me hope that we could coexist peacefully. She set clear expectations from the start. "I'll continue to prepare the meals as usual. Ethan often comes home late, so it's fine if we eat at different times, right, Patricia? I'll leave the cleaning and laundry to you. Let's work well together," she said. After we married, I transitioned from full-time to part-time work at the pharmacy to better manage the household chores. This new schedule meant I wouldn't get home until nearly 9:05 p.m., but at least dinner was always ready, a small comfort during my solo dining routine. My mother-in-law and Willie typically ate before I arrived, which reinforced a sense of isolation even within my married life. At first, I wondered if this was all there was to family life, but I gradually accepted it as our way. Despite our seemingly smooth start, it became evident that my mother-in-law never truly accepted me or considered me part of the family. In my attempts to bond with Willie, I asked about his school activities. "Willie, when is the school's activity day before summer? We're all going to see you, aren't we?" Before he could answer, my mother-in-law quickly intervened, saying, "We'll go, just Ethan and me. Patricia, you don't need to worry about it." Misunderstanding her intentions, I persisted, "I can take the day off work. Let's all go together." But she dismissed me sharply. "You don't need to do that. Your Ethan's wife and family has always just been Ethan and me." Her words stunned me. That night, I expressed my shock to Ethan, who explained, "Mom has been clinging to Willie. She probably thinks you're trying to take him away. I'll talk to her about it over time." I managed to attend the activity day, hoping to integrate into the family as a mother figure. However, Willie and I rarely interacted outside of these school events. Sometimes I sensed he wanted to open up, but my mother-in-law consistently interjected, blocking any progress. I later discovered she had been tarnishing my image in Willie's eyes, suggesting that I would be happier if he weren't in the picture. This revelation deeply hurt me, highlighting the complexities and challenges of blending into a family with pre-existing bonds and hidden resentments. The accusations were harsh. "She's a terrible person. Dad must be deceived by her too." Hearing such negative comments from my mother-in-law must have influenced Willie during his impressionable teenage years, explaining why he grew distant from me. The situation was disheartening. I had never imagined she could be so manipulative. By the time Willie graduated from high school, he was eager to leave home. He moved in with his girlfriend immediately and departed for college soon after. Within a year of starting his career, he married her quietly and simply, without any formal ceremony. Once Willie was gone, my mother-in-law's behavior took a turn for the worse. Surprisingly, she stopped all housework, which had been a regular part of her daily routine. It seemed her new pastime was finding fault with me. She stopped cooking, something she had previously taken pride in, and would sit at the dining table waiting for me to return from work. The moment I stepped into the kitchen to prepare a meal, the criticisms began. "You're so inefficient. At this rate, it'll take you all night," she scoffed. I admitted I wasn't skilled at cooking, mainly because I had relied on her for meals. Whenever I did manage to cook, she critiqued every dish relentlessly. "This tastes awful," she would say, grimacing. "I'm sorry. I'm trying my best," I would respond, only to hear her retort, "You're astonishingly tone deaf when it comes to flavors, Patricia. It's a good thing Willie never had to eat this." If she disliked it so much, I thought, why didn't she just cook herself? It seemed her goal was merely to berate me. Her complaints weren't limited to my cooking. She began to nitpick everything I did, from chores I wasn't accustomed to handling to laundry. "Why are there so many wrinkles in the laundry? You have to vacuum every nook and cranny. You really can't do anything right. Didn't your family teach you anything?" These jabs at my upbringing were especially painful. She would sigh disdainfully and say, "I don't know how you won over Ethan, but I can't see much charm in you as a woman." She always concluded with the same hurtful line, "If you hadn't come along, Willie would have never left." I realized her heart was aching from Willie's absence. Perhaps it was a case of empty nest syndrome. I told myself that if venting her frustrations on me helped her cope, I should just bear it. However, her antagonism intensified after a particular event. The announcement of Willie's wife, Teresa, being pregnant. The joy she displayed was unlike anything I had seen before. "It's Will's baby. It's bound to be adorable. He'll be my first grandchild," she exclaimed with genuine happiness, watching their elation. Despite the ongoing challenges at home, I found a small piece of joy for myself. My mother-in-law's excitement over the impending arrival of her great-grandchild was nothing short of overwhelming. The catalyst for her exuberance came when Willie asked if his wife, Teresa, could have their baby at our place, given that her family lived an hour away and they lacked local support. Thrilled to be needed, my mother-in-law immediately agreed to help. Joy palpable. Willie's calls became a daily occurrence, each one sending her excitement soaring even higher. She dove into preparations with fervor, clearing out Willie's old room, organizing the space for the baby, and meticulously planning everything from nursery decor to essential baby supplies. The moment I got home from work, she enlisted my help. "Patricia, I've taken care of the vacuuming in Willie's room. Could you handle wiping down the floors and the windows? And make sure to wax them too," she instructed, her tone urgent. "This weekend, we're off to buy a crib," she added, as if it were the most natural plan for our weekend. Juggling these tasks late into the night after my shifts was grueling, and any attempt to shortcut the process was met with a stern command to start over. Before long, her requests extended to finances. "Patricia, I need you to withdraw some money tomorrow. There are a few more things I want to pick up for the baby," she declared one morning. I hesitated, concerned by the rapid pace of spending. Shouldn't we wait for Teresa and Willie to arrive before we buy so much? Maybe Teresa would like to choose some things herself, I suggested, hoping to inject some practicality into the frenzy. Her response was sharp and dismissive. "How can you be so detached? It's Ethan's grandchild, after all." "Oh, but of course, you're not related by blood. You wouldn't understand, would you?" The accusation stung, and I tried to clarify my position gently. "It's not that I don't care. I just thought it might be nice for Teresa to have a say in her own child's preparations," I explained. But my attempt to reason with her seemed to hit a nerve. She shot me a piercing glare, and I realized I may have crossed the line. I watched helplessly as she turned and retreated to her room, deeply upset. That night, I reflected on our harsh exchange, feeling the weight of her words. The following morning, she stayed in her room, likely still angry about our conversation. Ethan was about to leave on a business trip when he paused at her door to make a final remark. "I'm heading out. Don't dampen Mom's enthusiasm about the grandchild. She's been different since Willie moved out. You've noticed it too, right?" I nodded but added, "However, if we use up all our funds now, what will we do when Willie and Teresa need our help?" Ethan frowned, misunderstanding my concern. "Are you suggesting?" "I don't make enough money," Ethan said, but I quickly reassured him. "That's not it at all." However, it was too late. He left visibly upset, leaving me alone to ponder the delicate balance of family dynamics and financial responsibility. As the one managing our household finances for over 12 years, I considered it prudent to think ahead. Ethan had always reassured me that my part-time income was for my own use, so I diligently saved whatever I didn't spend, viewing it as a shared resource for our future. However, the financial stability of our household had been steadily deteriorating over the past 4 years. Ethan's salary had shrunk to a third of what it was when we first got married, due to his company's declining performance. Despite the uncertainty about the company's future and his job security until retirement, Ethan was reluctant to seek new employment, unwilling to relinquish his role as department head, primarily to maintain appearances in front of my mother-in-law. As a result, I took on the responsibility of paying our rent while he managed other living expenses. We kept this arrangement hidden from my mother-in-law to preserve Ethan's dignity. One day, feeling the weight of recent tensions, I decided to leave work early to apologize to my mother-in-law. When I arrived home, she was already seated at the dining table, waiting for me. "I'm sorry about yesterday. I may have been too harsh," I began, but she interrupted me with an icy demeanor. "Willie and Teresa are coming back to have their baby here. I need you to move out," she stated bluntly. Stunned, I barely managed to ask, "I have to leave?" She confirmed, "Yes. We don't need another mother figure. You've been redundant for a while now. Willie and his family will be living here. Make sure you're out by tomorrow." Her words hit me like a freight train. I had never felt fully accepted by the family. I had always been the outsider. Now, with Willie's return for the birth, it was clear I was a failure. "You were allowed to experience raising a child. Be grateful for that. We have no obligation to support you anymore. It seems Ethan is tired of you too. Maybe he's getting along well with a new girlfriend by now." Shocked and heartbroken, I grabbed my bag and left the house, wandering aimlessly to calm my shaken spirit. I tried calling Ethan, but despite my mother-in-law's insinuations, he didn't answer, no matter how many times I dialed. I even called his office, only to find out he had taken a few days off. The suspicions seeded by my mother-in-law started to seem more plausible. Overwhelmed with emotion and tears streaming down my face, I found myself in front of the pub near the station, a place Ethan and I used to frequent when we first moved here. It still stood as a relic of happier times. As I entered, the owner's face clouded with concern before he recognized me. "Hey, long time no see." "It's been about 6 years," I replied, trying to muster a smile despite my distress. "Yes, it's been a while. I remember you," he said, offering a nod of recognition that brought a brief sense of relief. "Can I get a beer and a mixed plate of charbroiled chicken?" I asked for a small comfort in this familiar place, a refuge from the storm swirling through my life. As I settled into the pub, I engaged in light conversation with the owner, a man of few words, while sipping my cold beer and savoring the charbroiled chicken. Pulling out my cell phone, I lit up the screen to reveal a photo of Ethan and me taken on Willie's 17th birthday. He looked dashing in the slim suit we had chosen together, and I found myself wishing for a closer family bond. The beer seemed to wash away the day's troubles, and as I contemplated my next steps, I browsed for moving companies, discovering one available for the next day. I bookmarked a couple of junk removal services, saving their contacts in my favorites, and changed my screensaver to something less personal. A sense of mental clarity began to return, and the meal tasted exceptionally good. Perhaps a small comfort amid the chaos. I decided to give the situation more thought once I was back home. As I walked away from the pub, a young waitress hurried towards me. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Patricia?" she asked. Having noted my previous screensaver, she hesitated, then dropped a bombshell. She believed my husband was having an affair with one of their employees. We exchanged contact details, and she promised to keep me updated. Suddenly, the pieces began to fit together, validating the harsh words of my mother-in-law. Instead of feeling sad, a fierce anger surged within me. It was time to confront this head-on. That evening, I contacted the moving company and resolved to leave the next day. If there was no conspiracy and my mother-in-law and Willie were indeed plotting against me, I no longer felt obliged to maintain appearances. I packed my belongings relentlessly until midnight. The movers arrived promptly the next morning, and I instructed them to take everything I had purchased. I was determined to erase any trace of my presence. My mother-in-law was taken aback by my resolve. "I'm taking everything I bought. You can start fresh tomorrow," I declared. "I'm taking everything I bought," I declared, barely suppressing a laugh at her protests. The movers efficiently cleared out my belongings, leaving behind only the baby gear and her old dresser, the remnants of a life before I arrived. "Well then, I bid you farewell. There shouldn't be a trace of me left, so enjoy your new life with Ethan, Willie, and his family," I said coolly, leaving her stunned as I placed the keys on the table and exited the house, the movers trailing behind with my possessions. I decided to stay with a colleague temporarily, feeling a sense of completion and relief wash over me. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months. 2 weeks later, Ethan finally reached out. his voice tinged with confusion and urgency. Patricia, where are you? Willie and his family are here. Aren't you coming home soon? No, I'm not coming back, I replied firmly, recalling his mother's command for me to leave. Meanwhile, the young waitress from the pub had kept her promise, sending me a photo of Ethan chatting intimately with another woman at the pub and later entering the hotel with her. This betrayal erased any remaining affection I had for him. Armed with evidence of the affair, I was ready to confront the situation fully. No longer bound by illusions of my old life, I had had enough. I didn't hesitate to make it clear to Ethan over the phone. Willie and his family are moving in with you, right? I figured as much. I heard they've been struggling financially, bouncing between part-time jobs since Willie graduated from vocational school. I want you back, Patricia, Ethan replied, desperation lacing his voice. I went to the pharmacy and they said you were taking some time off. Yeah, I needed a break, I said nonchalantly. But I'm fine, so don't worry about me. Your mom and Willie probably prefer having the house to themselves without me around. My blunt remark left Ethan speechless. He knew all too well that his mother and Willie had never accepted me, but he chose to ignore it. All right, I need to talk, so I'll come back there, he said, a plea evident in his tone. A few days later, I returned to the house for the first time since leaving. Inside, I noticed new furniture and appliances. Willie and Teresa barely acknowledged my presence, nodding from their seats on the sofa without standing. As I sat down, my mother-in-law glared at me with a mix of shock and disdain, the atmosphere thick with tension. Before I could rush my visit and leave, Willie confronted me. What are you doing here? You took everything from the house. What kind of monster does that? Dad's been supporting you, and you've had it easy. I exhaled deeply, frustration boiling over. I took everything because I paid for it. I was clearing out all traces of myself, just as you all wanted, right? That's crazy. There's no way you could afford all that, just working part-time at the pharmacy, Willie shot back. Turning to face Ethan, I replied firmly, we've been getting by on what both Ethan and I earn. And for your information, Ethan's company hasn't been doing well. His salary has dropped significantly. For the past 4 years, I've been the one covering the shortfall. I've been paying our rent. My mother-in-law's face registered shock as she turned to look at Ethan, who awkwardly avoided her gaze. I'm not just a part-timer. I'm a druggist, and the pay is quite good. I make more than Ethan now. The room went silent, the tension palpable. I turned to Willie. I decided it was time to face some hard truths. Since you're going to live here now, it's time for you to start taking responsibility. You'll be paying the rent to help your grandmother. Willie's face twisted in surprise. Rent? How much is it? It's $7,200, I stated firmly. Good luck, because it seems my role here is over. I have no obligation to take care of you anymore. You're going to be a father soon, Willie. It's time to pull yourself together. Teresa, overhearing our conversation, suddenly spoke up, panic evident in her voice. Wait, $7,200? Weren't we supposed to live here for free? I stood ready to leave, satisfied that I had made my point clear. Covering rent and living expenses is just part of life. Good luck figuring it out. As I walked out, leaving them to absorb this new reality, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The chapter of my life filled with neglect and ingratitude was finally closing. I almost burst out laughing at the absurdity of the situation but managed to keep my composure. Don't worry, Teresa. There are cheaper places available. Ethan still makes a decent salary after all, I remarked, watching her face relax slightly. Then, with a heavy dose of sarcasm, I added, oh, and since I'll be leaving, life might get tough for you, Ethan, especially with your mistress. At that, Teresa's composure shattered, and she dissolved into tears. What are you talking about? My husband stammered, looking panicked. Through her tears, Teresa responded, oh, your mother told me about the new woman. I guess it's time to end my role as a wife too. Ethan looked flustered. My mother said what? He sputtered, realizing too late that I knew far more than he wished I did. It hasn't even been 6 days since I left the house. Ethan, wouldn't that hurt Grace if she knew? I mused aloud. At the mention of Grace's name, Ethan's face went pale, confirming my suspicions. This isn't the right atmosphere to discuss divorce papers, but I'll be in touch about that later, I declared, standing up to leave. Neither Ethan nor Willie could find the words to respond. They remained silent as I grabbed my bag. However, my mother-in-law abruptly stood up, slamming her hands on the table and yelling with surprising vigor for her age. "What the hell? It's all your fault. Our home is in shambles." I shot back without hesitation. "It was you who told me to leave, you who hinted at Ethan's affair, and you who interfered with my relationship with Willie. Everything is because of you." A rush of anger surged through me, and I regretted not being more assertive in my relationship with Willie and not stating up to her sooner. "Willie has nothing to do with this, Ethan. It's time for you to step up. You're going through a hard time. You should support him as his wife and take responsibility as a family member," I admonished. "What is she even talking about?" my mother-in-law muttered, bewildered. If she hadn't called Willie back home, if she hadn't hinted at Ethan's affair, I would still be supporting Ethan in this home. "Where are you, Willie? Why are you still here?" "It's all her fault," my mother-in-law concluded, her lips pressed tightly together, trembling with emotion. I slipped past her and quickly left the room. Afterward, Ethan agreed to the divorce rather easily. My determination and the undeniable evidence of the affair left him no other choice. Shortly after, it seemed they began the process of moving out of the apartment. In the end, Willie and Teresa returned to their own apartment, opting not to live with my mother-in-law. Ethan appeared to be considering remarriage, but Grace was furious over the alimony and his request for her to live with his mother. I heard they were now deliberating their next steps after everything that transpired. My mother-in-law eventually ended up in a care facility. It's somewhat melancholy to reflect on the irony of her situation. After all the dedication she poured into raising her son and caring for her grandson, it seems they are now ready to move on without her. Perhaps, in their eyes, she had fulfilled her role. If my mother-in-law had held her tongue back then, and if it had merely been a simple return home for childbirth, maybe we could have continued living together even after the divorce. But things unfolded differently. Willie sent me an apology letter recently. In it, he expressed his childhood longing for more affection and explained that he couldn't talk to me freely because his grandmother disapproved. He also shared how pleased he was whenever I attended his school events. Reading his words, I wondered if I should have made more effort to connect with him. Maybe then our relationship could have taken a different path. Despite the end of our familial ties, I find myself silently hoping for Willie's happiness in life. As for me, I've returned to my job as a druggist and rented an apartment close to my workplace. I didn't feel right keeping the furniture and appliances I had taken from the house, so I arranged for a junk removal service to take them away. Life without the constant criticism and interference of my mother-in-law has turned out to be peaceful and comfortable. For now, I am focused on living for my own happiness, no longer beholden to fulfilling someone else's expectations or desires. It's a new chapter, one where I can finally breathe freely and look forward to what comes next.